So, my name is Alexander Gross, and I will be doing my authentic assessment for English 205 Introduction into Shakespeare. During this introduction into Shakespeare, we really learned a lot of the facts and things about Shakespeare's life, um, the impetus behind most of his works, and the periods and the genres in which he wrote in. I'll be doing my authentic assessment primarily on the cultural relevance of Shakespeare today. Why are we spending all this time reading and studying, works that were written over 400 years ago? Primarily, this is because of, I believe, the strong characters that Shakespeare created, how his message, resonates today, even though it's 400 years old, and also how he mixed genres. He would use comedies with tragedies to create very indelible works. So we'll start off with the strong characters. We're going to be looking at Richard III, Henry V, and we're also going to be looking at Othello. Um, in Richard III, we see probably one of the most villainous individuals in the English language. Richard III, from the outset of the play, sets out to seize the English throne. And in doing so, he leaves wakes of bodies, and anyone who stands in his way is truly decimated. But as we see in the end of Act 5, Richard comes to himself and has a moment of clarity, and he realizes that, well, if I achieve all these things but no one loves me, then was it really worth it? And I believe that these this is juxtaposed by having what we want but not understanding really what it means to get it. And when he got the throne, I believe that it was empty and hollow, and he really began to question, was it worth it? In Henry V, we see a young Hal and Henry IV, Part 1 and Part 2, really transitioning and coming to his own. We see, Hal being, the son of the king, very reluctant to accept the responsibilities and authorities of his birthright. Um, Even though his father came to the throne by usurpation and Hal didn't ask to be it, we see in Henry V a very noble, strong character. And I believe that this is part of that redemptive nature that sometimes is easy to resonate with, because when we see how easily it is to come back from tragedies or situations, we see how overcomes a lot of adversity, and at the Battle of Agincourt, really solidifying, really becoming one of the greatest, English kings of all time. And I think Shakespeare really captures that very well. In Othello, we see a very interesting character. We see the first time Shakespeare using a black protagonist, and this is something that really hasn't been done, since to the 21st century, and pushing those boundaries and going a little further beyond what is expected. But the messages, how does Shakespeare messages resonate? Yes, I believe he uses universal themes, power, greed, ambition. He uses jealousy. He uses envy. He uses these things, and he can creates them in the characters. So it's almost as if the characters are the play, and the play is the backdrop, just to express or to show that human nature side of it. And I believe that that message is very strong and resonates, because if we understand these characters, I believe it allows us to see ourselves a little bit, because we see that these qualities are created. As far as mixing in the genres, I believe that Shakespeare was very well, primarily in Henry V, with characters like Falstaff, and how we would see some of the characters being, multiple things. The comedy, I think, is very important, because it does throw that light sense of air into subjects that are very, tense. In Richard III, we don't see a lot of comedy, but we also see a lot of the dialogue and the soliloquies with Queen Elizabeth. We see some of the characters interacting in a way that doesn't just go to tragedy. There's also some drama in there. Very dramatic scenes in there. In Othello, we see the jealousy, but we also see a lot of the interaction with the characters, and some of the situations become comical if we look at them from different perspectives. Primarily not the protagonist, but we can see how these stories mesh together and create something that's very fascinating. And I think this is what transcends Shakespeare's works throughout this time. So this has been my authentic assessment, and I believe that Shakespeare's works are just as relevant today as they were 400 years ago. Thank you very much.